I believe everybody knows who I am, so.
Oh, my.
All right, being a bit after 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, minutes of the last meeting.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone has a comment on anything on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will go to discussion and action items. Items for discussion and action, presentation by USG Water Solutions on water tower maintenance program. Hey,
Good evening to all. Thank you for having me in here, sitting there for me to present to you all. There was a full agenda here, so I'm going to try to keep this very brief and high level, but to introduce myself, my name is Tyler Argel from USG Water Solutions. I'm here to present to you all a proposal for a water tower asset management program for the Northern Caledonia. So this goes back about a month or so ago now. We did an initial condition assessment inspection of the tower to be able to put together a proposed program for you all at the end of my presentation here in regards to water tower management. Just a little bit high level about who we are. USG Water Solutions, we are an asset management company. We've been in business over 60 years. Water tower storage tanks is at the footprint of what we do. So I am a representative for the state of Wisconsin. I cover the entire state. You can see we are nationwide. We manage over 8,000 assets across the country as of today on a couple of different areas you can see here, including steel tanks, concrete, metering, asset management programs as well. So we're entrenched in the water space. Specific, we specialize in water storage tanks, both steel and concrete. Something I like to highlight first and foremost, we're ISO 9001 certified companies of safety and quality standard. Something we take a lot of pride in. So we were dealing with this as a company. We take that very seriously. It's not something that's given out to everybody. It's something that we uphold with integrity. So you might be wondering, why am I standing in front of you here today? First and foremost, this is an excerpt taken from the DNR state legislature as it pertains to water towers and storage tanks. Is that any water storage facility over 10,000 gallons needs to be inspected on a routine basis by either a tank inspection firm like USG Water Solutions or an engineer. Really what it boils down to is you're evaluating the integrity of that asset. The paint system, repainting it as necessary and as needed. So that's a service that we provide. Again, what we do is we are an asset management company, so we put a plan together to really extend the life of a very important and critical asset that you have as a community that serves your community and residents. We essentially will restore it to a like new condition and then keep it in that like new state, performing proactive maintenance checks and preventative maintenance along the way. There are DNR regulations and compliance standards that we will uphold as well. Extending the life of that asset, and we can do this providing you a predictable budget to perform those types of service. What have we done to this point? Again, we had an inspector on staff. He's a NACE certified inspector. NACE is a coding certification, so we're checking the coding system that's on the tower currently. We're checking for a couple of key areas. You can see here the coatings themselves. That's the paint that's essential to protecting the steel. Sanitary conditions, safety and security, as well as the structural conditions. We take paint samples, we send it off to a third-party lab. So we know for future, what type of coating system would be needed for a chemical and mechanical adhesion. Can't just go to the hardware store and grab a can of paint, it needs to be a specialized paint for water towers. We'll also check for lead and chromium as well. It does get to a point, at some point where you have to blast all the paint off down to bare steel and start again, so we want to know as a company, is there lead on that paint for containment disposal? All things that we're taking into account here. So I have, as you can see in the packet there, you have the slides from all the pictures that were taken from the condition assessment. I'm not going to go through every single slide here today. Want to more so just touch on some of the key points and kind of talk about our proposal here. I would like to point out that, again, I covered the state of Wisconsin. These are some of your used local loosely, but these are some neighboring communities in the area that are utilizing the same program with us currently. So Lewisburg, we manage one of their tanks, 2 tanks in Belgium, 2 tanks in Elkhart Lake, 3 tanks in Port Washington, 2 tanks in Slinger. So some local communities that I would encourage you to reach out to if this is something that you're considering. These are communities that are doing this same program with us today. And currently I have over 66 tanks that I manage throughout the state of Wisconsin. This is not the water tower in Fredonia, Wisconsin. This is actually a tank that we did in Ohio. I just like to highlight this because a water tower is focal point of any community, and it can be as basic or simplistic as you want it to be. This is kind of shows what our capabilities are as far as renovation and painting water towers. We can really turn it into a work of art. The coatings themselves, they're not just for aesthetic purposes. As I mentioned, that the coatings are there for protection of the steel. You can see based on this chart here that the coatings themselves do not last forever. Your water tower will need to be painted on a routine basis. So I'm kind of going to show you today where you guys fall on the spectrum as far as degradation of the condition of the coatings. And when would be probably the next time to consider doing that renovation project. I'm going to jump ahead here. And just to kind of touch on our capabilities. This is a picture of the exterior as it stands today, kind of a close-up view, but if this is something you are to incorporate in the next renovation project, this is something we have a team on hand where we basically put a mock-up together. If this is something you want to explore as far as a village logo or mascot, whatever it may be, you could look at putting a mock-up together for you guys so you can see what that would look like as an avenue you want to explore. We'll touch on this as well. Antennas, cell carriers are very common on storage tanks. That's an additional revenue for the village. We can kind of be an intermediary in that process. So it's AT&T or Verizon, UScellular, whoever it may be, and they come to you and say that we want to do an upgrade of our equipment, or they're adding more equipment or doing a renovation. And we can kind of help we have engineers on staff where we can check for load calculations, make sure they're not putting too much load on the tank with damage. If they're having to do welds, we can touch up on that work. So we can kind of help throughout that process. All that's the service that's provided in this. Nothing really seen. This is what the inside of the water tower can look like as well. So when we do renovation project, it's not just the exterior, it's the interior as well. I'm just going to skip ahead here and save time. This is something we could review. Have any of you been part of any paint renovations for the village here on that existing water tower? You have been through one of those before? You have to remember roughly what that cost at the time?
No, I'd have to look it up.
Okay. So what I want to just kind of explain with this graph here is that it's an expensive endeavor. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So a traditional method for that is just when it comes time to need to paint the tank, you can either you've been budgeting for it leading up to that point, take out a loan, whatever the case may be, but once the work is completed, you would be owing that company the cost of that project at that time. And what you pay today to paint a water tower is not what you will pay 15 years from now, so we will see an increase. So what we can do and provide as a company is take that same cost to renovate that project, we can actually spread that cost out generally 3 to 5 years, so it makes it a little bit easier for the community to pay. So if it's a $500,000 project, paying that all at once versus paying $100,000 over 5 years, generally makes it a little bit more manageable. Again, the tank will need to be painted again in the future at some point, and then we can also do, essentially, once that cost spread is paid off, do an annual maintenance fee, or essentially you can prepay for future renovation work as well, so you won't have to absorb these large spikes, and basically pay incrementally along the way. This is a kind of a rough budgetary pool that we put together based on the condition assessment of the water tower in its current state. So good news is that the tape is in, the water tower is in good physical condition. There's no real immediate concerns. We think based on its current condition, it would probably be, in roughly 5, 6, 7 year time frame that would probably be suitable for looking at doing a renovation project. So generally, if you're going to paint the exterior of the tower, you have to drain the tower to be able to do so. So it's generally a good time to attack basically the whole renovation at once, or else you can split it out. But we recommend probably doing all that work in that same time frame. So not having to renovate the tank for a few years down the road, this is still a beneficial program because you can essentially lock in pricing now for a renovation project that's taking place a few years from now. So these are rough budgetary numbers, but essentially what we can do is start the process now, including inspection work. Along the way, the DNR does require routine inspections to be completed on the tower. So what we will do is basically come in and manage that whole process for you from start to finish. We'll do all the inspection work, we'll provide the proper paperwork that Eric or whoever would submit to the DNR, the regulatory body. So starting in year 1, basically what we would recommend is to do a washout, basically drain the tank of the water to a full clean. We'll do basically a chemical wash that eliminates some of the staining on the interior as well. We also included an exterior wash to clean up just some of the dirt debris that tends to build up on the underside of the tank. And then we would do a combination of inspections leading up to the actual renovation project. And then when that project takes place, like I mentioned, we can do that cost spread. So basically taking the cost of that renovation job and spreading it out over 4 years in equal payments, which make it a little bit more easy to plan for and budget for. Again, you lock it now, pay a little bit incrementally along the way, have a renovation project, gives you a couple of years to pay it off. And then starting in year 10 would be that annual maintenance fee, where now it's going to be essentially prepaying for that future renovation cost. So starting in year 10, it does go up, starting in year 11, 12, so it will go up year over year for inflationary increase, roughly 3.5%. But now that becomes a number that you could put in the budget. It's going to cover all of your inspections, all the engineering, emergency services, everything that's associated with this program. Essentially now you can project that number out for 15, 20 years, and now all of your future renovations are going to be included in that number. Helps on the planning side for the renovation work and budgeting as well. This is some of the repair work that we would address as well from a compliance standpoint, just for fence and certain things that DNR is looking for. We bring everything up to code, get it in the life new condition, and then we are very proactive. So we will be out at least once a year checking on the condition of the tower and keeping it in that life new state. Any questions on that? That would be maybe slide up if there are any questions or anything that you'd like me to go back and cover.
We're being approached by a company who wants to buy the rights and the 99-year lease on the tower, and that I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. You probably maybe had worked with them in the past, but I don't know if they would absorb those payments when they took over it, or how that would be handled.
I've not personally dealt with that situation before.
So you are right now, Boostburg is your client. Boostburg is the community that has the cell tower pieces where another company acts as like the landlord buying out those assets.
Okay,
So that's what he's asking about, is we're currently in negotiations about that and.
okay, for the actual cell carriers on there.
Correct, yeah. So they buy out the leases themselves, not the property you're in.
Right, yeah, so we would not, so you would receive the payment from that, for that, we would not be involved in receiving any payment for that, we can just kind of help if they're doing upgrades and modifications to be kind of an engineer of sorts to make sure that they are not damaging the integrity of the tank if they're doing any work, but we would not be in the middle as far as you receiving payment from them or anything like that,
Right.
from answering your question.
Yeah, that was my main question. I'm the only one left in the entire village government that was here 3 or 4 years ago when Dixon completed their contract.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Dixon?
I know, yes.
They provide a similar service or whatever. I would have to check to make sure that they aren't holding funds for us for future before we would consider going into something like this.
If I may step back a minute here too, so, so traditional model for renovation in a company like Dixon Engineering is their, an engineering tank firm, so, they're involved typically in putting a spec together, put it out to bid for a company to do the work, so, once work is completed, there's generally an inspection process too, to check that work, so there's a lot of people involved in that process, or fees associated with the engineering on that side. If something were to go wrong, who is ultimately responsible, where in this model with USG Water Solutions, we are doing everything as one. So we are putting the proposal together for our crews to be able to do the work, inspecting it, and then we will warranty the condition of the coatings as long as you're on this program for us, with us. So if anything were to fail prematurely, whether that was in year 5 or year 10, we would come out that and fix that at no cost. With a traditional model like this, you might get 1 year to 2 years on a renovation project through like a freeze thaw period, and then after that 1 to 2 years, you're typically on your own if anything were to happen. So that's just another added benefit to this model working with us is the level of protection that you'd be getting throughout the duration of this program. It is a contracted service, it's evergreen, it will renew itself year over year, but you have the ability to cancel at any time, so it's not a set duration necessarily. You have the ability to cancel this service at any time.
Okay, because they were in charge of the painting of both the inside and the exterior. I believe 3 or 4 years ago that they hooked up the anode protection,
Cathodic protection.
the cathodic protection. It wasn't necessary. They said it wasn't necessary the first handful of years because there's no electrolysis going on or whatever, or shouldn't be. So there's a bunch of things we would have to check on to make sure that it would go from that program, which is over, to make sure that everything that we should be getting back, everything that they did and whatever, so we can get you started when their last inspection was, et cetera, et cetera. So you wouldn't be copying some of the things that they've completed already.
Sure.
So,
Again, this is our recommendation, just given the condition at that time, so this is kind of what we're putting together initially, not based on Dixon's reporting or anything, this is our assessment of it in its current condition and kind of what we would propose moving forward. Yes, sir.
So you guys did an inspection in August?
Yeah, it's a free condition assessment for us to be able to kind of build this out and show you based on what we found in the condition of the tank. So this was our own assessment of the condition of the tank, inspection that we did.
And from that inspection, the determination was that you had that, work should be done in 5 years, you said?
roughly, yeah.
Okay. What is that based on?
The conditions of the coatings themselves, there's an adhesion, of the paint over one another. So again, the coatings do not last forever, and they will degrade over time. So just based on the current adhesion, and the condition of the coatings, there's a couple of tests I can show you if you like. I can kind of walk through that if you'd like me to.
Sure.
Try not to.
Yeah, just briefly.
Yes, that's a great question. So this is the test we put, it's called an adhesion test, so essentially, put an X scribe into the side of the tank. We have a special tape that we use for adhesion. Put that tape over that X scribe, and the amount of paint that comes with that tape will basically give you an assessment of the adhesion, kind of on the scale. Here's the A is the type of test that we did, it's that X scribe. So based on our, let's see on the slide here, let me just double check my notes. So the adhesion, based on what was peeled back, the lighting is great, but we determined it was about 4A. So an overcoat is essentially just a paint over the existing coating that's there. Full blast would be, like I mentioned, where you have to blast the entire painting off of the tower down to bare steel. So we think that the adhesion, based on our test, is still strong enough and positive, or we're still in that window where we can paint over what's there. That's a good thing. When you have to do a full blast and containment full, that's where it gets very expensive. So we want to be in this overcoat window as long as possible, so you can paint over what's there, because that's a more cost-effective means of doing so. So we want to get in there before the coatings continue to degrade and we miss this window, and then we're over here. That's again where it gets a lot more expensive. We also will do a dry film thickness test. It's essentially a gauge that will tell us how thick these coatings are, essentially how many times is it painted. So the average dry film thickness on this section here was about a 19. So that's telling me this tank has probably been painted since its original form, probably 3 to 4 times, possibly. When you get into like the mid-20s to high 20s, that's where it does get to a point where only so many coatings can continue to be applied. It just becomes so heavy, it won't continue to work as it should. So you will have to do a full blast at some point. We think based on the adhesion and the current dry film thickness, we can probably paint this tank 2 more times, hopefully, before we would have to do the full blast. But when it did get to that point, that's going to be included in this program. It can help absorb some of that added cost because you're paying incrementally along the way, and we factored in future costs as well.
When was the last time it was painted?
I would say maybe 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
Well, I thought I had a picture of it, I thought it was 20 or
You texted
21.
me 2020,
20.
the exterior, but I'm not privy to that.
Okay.
Yeah, the picture I got was 2020.
Okay.
Interior, that I don't know, but from what I get, Tyler, is you're saying before you have to do a full blast, and if we could go 12 to 15 years for each paint, so we're looking at least 25 years out before you have that big cost.
And we don't say that the tank needs to be painted every 15, it's not necessarily a fixed number of years. That's why we're coming out every year and assessing, and then we will make determinations based on the condition of the tank at that time. So the next paint job, let's say that we were painting it this year, the next one might be in 12 years, might be 15. It's just, that's kind of the benefit of having somebody that's going to be out there every single year, and we'll make those determinations. We can do touch-up work. It's just a very proactive method of addressing tank maintenance versus waiting 20 years, painting, you don't know what the condition is going to be necessarily. You may have missed this window and you don't really have a choice. So you have to do something that's a lot more expensive to do so.
So when I have my inspection with the DNR and she comes out and says, this and this and this are bad, is that something, if we go with you on this contract, that you fix?
And that's kind of what we're gonna be doing on the front end too. We know what they're looking for and things that are currently out of compliance, we would get them into compliance as of today's standards. There are certain things like, you know, we were not in the wet interior of this roof, so we don't truly know the condition of the steel rafter, and if we do have to do blasting at some point, there could be condition of the steel may not be what we think it is, and so there could be a change order at some point throughout the life of this contract. Just there are certain things that we don't know until we actually get in there and are working on them, but we do our very best to mitigate those and include everything that we think is going to be on the front.
So we are due next October, it's supposed to be a complete empty. And because I said I was working with trying to get a program going and that, she pushed it off another 5 years. So it has to be dive.
So we would actually, that is a method of inspection, is a dive. We use a robotic camera, ROV we call it. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't do diver safety. Number one, so this robotic camera is a way for us the tank does not have to be drained. It's a submersible piece of equipment. We can deploy that into the wet interior, get pictures and then get an idea of the coatings themselves. That's an accepted method. It's more cost effective than versus sending it in diver as well, but we can do that as well. That would be included in this program. Anything that's DNR related for inspection would be included.
Are you familiar with the type of coating that's on there now? Or would it be by guess and by gosh?
So our paint samples. This is we sent off paint samples to a third party. This is the type of coating system that is on there currently. Probably doesn't mean anything to you, but this is a pretty normal system. It's not anything would require any special type of work, anything like that. Epoxy urethane is usually the finish coat on top, so this is nothing out of the ordinary. But we want to know that, so we know that, again, there's an adhesion process there. We can't just throw any paint over the top of this and expect it to work. We need to know what it is. And then these were the lead and chromium results that came back with really nothing alarming, and even if there were, it's more just for our knowledge base. If we do have to do a blast, if there's a lot of lead on the exterior paint job of the tank, you can't just be blasting it into open air. We just need to know what we're working with as far as the coating system.
All right, because we were told that it was like the latest thing, which the epoxy coatings and whatever are newer than a lot of the other coatings and whatever, so
At
they
that
probably
time,
have something
essentially,
that's newer now.
It's constantly changing, and now
Right.
there's regulations behind the VOCs, and they're constantly evolving. The coating system have changed there actively. So what you used at that time maybe was the best thing at that time, and it may not be the best thing at this time. We do different things on the wet interior too. We can do 100% solids coating on the wet interior, where it'll cost a little bit more upfront, but it would last roughly 20+ years potentially too. So we can obviously work with you guys, and as far as what you want to accomplish, as far as again, aesthetics, things like that, we can obviously pick a correct coating system that works with you guys.
Yeah, the bottom of the ball is painted a different color, that's because that paint adheres to the tank, even when the moss and the other growths that attack a tank are working on it. So
Yeah, this is very common. You're seeing this more and more, just of a painted kind of underside too, just because it will kind of mask
that's just to keep them from seeing this stuff.
the dirt debris. Yeah, it kind of hides that a little bit. But Oostburg, if you know, it's pure white. So we do an exterior wash for them every 5 years or so, just to keep it looking. It's not necessarily damaging the coatings to have the dirt debris on there, but it's certainly nice to keep it looking clean and nice. Again, this is certainly a focal point for most communities. So that's a service that we can provide as well. We're coming out every couple of years and doing a cleanup on the exterior as well.
All right, we have a number of things to check on. Take a look at the old.
Thank you.
books and stuff. But, we, went with Dixon because it was, plainly, it was a similar system and a service that you provide there. And we wanted to be in a turnkey type of situation that we just don't have to worry about it. We got people that are watching that. So that was the, what we're after, so. Okay, so then you don't do, a specific contract for so many years, you do, an ongoing.
We can do it a number of different ways. We can do a set duration where X amount of services are provided in that duration. If that's why we set 5-year to 10-year contract, we can do it that way. The model that I'm showing you today is just a renewable, renews itself year over year on an anniversary date.
All right,
One invoice per year. So however you would want to set it up.
any other questions? No? Eric? All right, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, discussion and possible recommendations to the board of trustees on water tower maintenance program. Is there anything that board wants to discuss? That the committee wants to discuss? Or are we gonna do that as kind of a discussion of the whole when we get to the village board meeting? We can do that within our report.
We're still on the water tower, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is meant to be, if you guys like what you saw, that you can make a recommendation to the village board. And we have it set for a discussion and action at the village board level next.
Mhm.
Downsides before we-
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So what,
Okay.
what would you all like? So I looked up Dixon, so I got their contact information. You wanted to know their last reporting that they had done, inspection reports. If they're holding any dollars from us still.
Are they holding any reserve funds or anything for the future?
Yep.
Function that, and whatever, so.
Okay.
Things like that.
Anything else you want me to ask?
I can let you know
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay.
But, something always pops up, you know, once you walk out the door, oh, I should have said that.
Is there any reason why we don't get a recommendation from Nixon? I mean, as a comparison?
Well, we can, see what the board wants to do. If the board is interested in continuing with this type of service, we can recommend this company
Mhm.
Well,
and do our homework and whatever, and
basically what Tyler has said, that they are the ones doing all of the service. And it sounds like Dixon, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
they are bringing in outside contractors,
Correct.
so.
yeah, we wouldn't be alone with them up here, you know. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll have a discussion on that on the village board. All right,
So I'm sorry, you do want to have a discussion at the village board level?
yeah, well, we'll do a report and
Okay.
we'll put that down under discussion or whatever. So we can discuss it. I'm sure the rest of the board will have a number of questions and whatnot.
Yeah.
Because they're not familiar with Dixon either.
Yep.
Had they been under that, you know, it would have been, they would have recognized this and
Mhm.
whatever, so.
Because it's planned to be on the agenda for the next meeting, so I just want to make sure that you're okay with
Yeah.
that, so, okay.
So I
Okay.
will give you a little bit with Dixon. A year and a half, I chased them down to do the warranty work on stuff they installed 3 years ago. So that is why I have Tyler here.
Yeah,
I don't have time to chase contractors down and do the job they're supposed to do.
no, we'll have to do that.
So
We'll have
if
stuff
there's
to-
still money out there that I haven't gone into, but. I mean, that was.
Mhm.
Over a year and a half ago that I've been fighting them to come out and warranty the work that they did. They put that mixer in there and it never worked till 3 months ago. When I finally forced him to get out here to put it together.
Did they finally come out?
They,
towards you?
well, he had a guy come out and then told me that I owe him more money to make it right, and I said, no, he can leave.
So I'm guessing they're not sitting on dollars.
So I would say no, because I think that was 22 that Roger had that put in.
We can do a bunch of, searching and records and stuff from our,
We can make sure.
you've got enough on your plate.
What?
Okay. Are we ready for the presentation from Strand on the wastewater treatment plant
I
upgrade?
would say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyler.
Okay, you have 9 minutes.
It'll take a lot more than that.
You want to watch the debate?
It started already, or was that 8 o'clock?
Starts at 8. I've been kidding about it since 7, but yeah, they don't start till 8. They sure doing all their preparation.
I know.
So that thing never worked and Roger never said anything about it? Or was that at the time that they were?
Because, yeah, because Roger was gone before I took over,
Hmm.
and when I went to that conference, and I'm like, you know, I have all this stuff for Dixon, and I can't get the mixer to work, I don't know what's going on here. So finally got him out here to fix it.
Yeah. I suppose they weren't too hard about coming up and working it without a contract. So,
Sounds pretty bogus to me.
Don's the only one.
good evening, Phil.
So Phil DeMusick with Strand Associates, been working with the village for 10 years now. So Don, I know well, worked on a couple projects together. So I just wanna, the purpose, I guess, of this, I'm gonna run through, give you guys just an overview of the treatment plan. And then some proposed projects, some associated budgetary costs, and then I think the goal, Chris, is to kind of discuss what projects we want to move forward with potentially.
Are you gonna have, a PowerPoint that the board can have to go along with this, or are you gonna have a sheet of figures and stuff?
I can give you guys, I don't know, to Eric, but I can send it to Chris.
Okay.
Yes.
They're gonna wanna know the numbers.
Yeah, so brief agenda, go through the background, the post upgrades, estimated costs, and then the schedule. And feel free to stop me or ask questions. So here's the aerial photo of the treatment plant. I've highlighted the areas and the approximate construction year for the work, just to give you a feel for the age of the various assets. So this is, if you've ever been to the plant, this is kind of the main admin building and lab that was built around 1981. All the primary clarifier, there's a bio tower, aerobic digesters, aeration tanks, clarifiers, this equalization tank, and this tank are all from that 81 construction. 95, the sludge storage tank was built. In 2017, a second sludge storage tank was built and UV disinfection was added. It's that little square there. And then 2019, grit removal was added. So that's that area. Proposed upgrades, there's a lot on this slide, it's just summarizing it, all the subsequent slides, I'll give a little bit more detail on it. But basically these kind of dark areas are all the proposed or potential upcoming projects. Like I said, I'll walk through all of those in the next slides. So first, the way I step through this will mainly be the way the wastewater flows through the process. So the primary clarifiers is one of the first treatment processes. So the water's pumped through grit removal, then it comes into this tank and then down into the primary clarifiers, and this settles out heavier sludge. This is a process with a sludge pit here. And this can be somewhat odorous. You know, there's been some odor complaints at the treatment plant. This is one potential area where there's odors, and this process would be eliminated with the upgrades. So you have, you get rid of that potential odor source. And with that, after it flows through this tank, it's pumped up into the bio tower. The bio tower is not common necessarily at this size of plant. It was installed back in the 80s because there was supposed to be some kind of like meat packing industry or something that would provide a higher load to the plant. So that's why they put it in back then. It hasn't been really touched a whole heck of a lot since then. You can see some cracks in the concrete inside is not somewhere you want to go. So the goal is to get rid of this. I think it's quite frankly probably a safety concern for you going anywhere near it at this point. So this tank, and then there's actually a tank underneath here that would be converted to aerobic digesters. The existing aerobic digesters, these 3 tanks, and then these 3 aeration tanks, this would all become one big aeration basin. So there's 3 tanks here, you'd have 6 in total, and then the aerobic digester would be moved over here. The reason to move it is just the way the treatment plant process would work is it follow a serpentine path through these tanks. So if you made this an aeration tank, it wouldn't work real well with the flow of everything. So these 6 would all be turned into tanks like this. There'd be, it's not gonna take a ton to do this. You'd be coring holes in the walls and adding gates essentially to provide that flexibility to direct the flow to the different tanks. And then the feed into this tank is currently over here. It would come in on this side, so there'd be buried pipe and whatnot. So there's mentioned understate the amount of work associated with it. I'm just saying there isn't a new structure or anything. There new a lot of new piping. Adding a third final clarifier and RASWAS pumping station. So these are the existing clarifiers. This is where the sludge settles out of the wastewater, and then clear water flows over the weirs. There's 2 of them right now, they're covered. Third one would be proposed in this area. You can see the site is pretty tight, so we have to move the fence line back a little bit. Right now, sludge is wasted. So you have to remove the sludge that settles on the bottom of the tank, and that's a manual operation. Most plants have it automated through pumping. So that would be this RASWAS pumping station. And then there'd be a structure. You need a new structure to split flow between the 3 tanks. So that's what this mixed liquor splitter structure is. Flow from there, aeration tanks come here, and then it's split 3 ways to 3 different clarifiers. The reason to add the third one is just to provide increased capacity for the plant, and then 2 is redundancy. I know Eric had to take a tank down, I think this year, it's a little bit tough for you, right? When you're done.
The right tank down twice already this year, the left tank down once. Last year, the right tank failed. And that was down 3 months.
You're talking about the arm,
Yeah, when
that was the left.
And the plate and everything, we have everything.
So when you're down on one tank, that really limits your treatment capacity, and that tank fails, I guess, you're really kind of in trouble. So the third tank would provide that additional redundancy, and it would provide additional capacity, because you're getting pretty close to your rated hydraulic capacity with the design flows that we're looking at. Chemical phosphorus removal building, so this is the existing chemical room, it's in the back of the garage and then main admin building. So the goal would be, one, to move it out of that building, since that's a building that's kind of occupied. Yeah, vehicles and stuff in there, this is a corrosive chemical. This is just a picture of what one of these chemical buildings typically looks like. It's just a brick and block building, fairly high, because this tank is pretty big, so you can hold enough chemical to get a full tanker load. So this is an approximate footprint and potential location for it. These are the sludge storage tanks, so the main admin buildings up in that area. Replace mechanical screen and upgrade room to current standards. I think this one's a little bit further down on the wish list for Eric. This is the existing screen. So this is the very beginning of the plant. You're actually where our wastewater comes in here. It goes through the screen takes out plastics, air, whatever solid type materials. It conveys it into here and into a dumpster. This space, so this area is the same as here, actually has kind of a wood roof, which you can imagine for corrosive and wet environments isn't the best type of roof. So usually we want to have like a precast plank roof on here that's a little more corrosion resistant, moisture resistant. Some potential screen types to replace that style screen. They do make a multi-rake screen in this width. It's a fairly small width, so there aren't as many options for screening as you'd like. But this would be an option, and then I know Eric likes the step screens. I have not reached out to confirm if they have one for your specific project, but a step screen would be another option. So this works, it's almost like an escalator at the mall with fine openings in it, so that it steps up and material mats on this surface, and then it's conveyed up and eventually dumps into the dumpster.
Is that the type that ADL has?
No, Wassom's got a step screen. There was a couple other places that had step screens. A lot of them are getting away from what we have. If that shaft breaks,
Mm-hmm,
you're breaking everything by hand.
yeah,
And when Mike, I think it's right after Brandon went to DPW and Mike went down there, I think the back of the screen broke, didn't it? And they didn't know about it, and their numbers were through the roof and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, they couldn't see it. So
mm-hmm.
step screen is easy to maintain.
Yeah, it's a common screen, plants that one, they work well. Then just some additional kind of miscellaneous upgrades, adding an equalization tank for haul rates receiving. So right now, when a tanker truck comes in with porta potty waste or whatever kind of waste, they dump into this manhole and then it goes directly into the wet well without, it's just kind of a slug load. So adding a tank where you could throttle a valve to kind of trickle that flow into the plant instead of sending a slug load would help with treatment. Potentially adding a garage with, I think, just cold storage space. A building addition, provide like a actual break room and another bathroom. Adding a fire hydrant to the site. Replacing the diesel generator that's inside with the outdoor generator, enclosed diesel generator. And then repaving this access road.
Why is a fire hydrant needed?
So when we clean the tanks, we're running off a 1-inch hose to try and spray them down.
Mhm.
We don't have any water pressure out there.
Oh,
And the hydrant that's out there is on the other side of
Do
the
it
fence.
when, yeah.
So I'm looking at getting something inside the fence so we can
oh,
use fire hose and clean it down.
okay. So you have to have a long hose in order to use that fire hydrant?
Right now, what we did was, I had a plumber come out and then he put. I don't know what's the opposite of a reducer.
Increaser.
Made it bigger so we could hook fire hose on, so we actually have some water. Otherwise, he was always doing it with a garden hose. Don't get much clean with a garden hose.
No, I don't think so. No.
Alright, I hope everyone can read this okay, but it's kind of a line by line of all the things I just stepped through, so. Primary clarifier, biotower conversion to aerobic digesters, about 900,000. Convert digesters to extended airs, about 1 million. The third clarifier with the Rasquez pumping stations, about 1.8. I skipped over this one, but to help with settling, you can retrofit your existing clarifiers with energy dissipating inlets, which basically it baffles inside the clarifier, so it helps with the settling. That's about 270,000. The chemical phosphorus removal building is about 1.5 million. And then some of these miscellaneous improvements, the screening, I didn't break down the entire cost of that yet. It's the equipment only for that multi-rig screen is about 110,000. It depends how deep you want to get into the building, and the total cost being here already, I didn't know where you guys were gonna go with stuff, so I didn't spend a lot of time getting into that. But some of the other ones, I know the diesel generator, I think that's pretty important for you there. I didn't have time to get across, we just talked about that on Thursday. You know, the equalization tank, that's gonna be in the $50,000 to $100,000 range, depending on how big you want it. So that's kind of the menu, I guess you could say, and. Yeah, any questions on that? Any additional questions? I think, Chris, this is what essentially what I sent you. I added in the screening stuff and the generator.
And then I know you and Isaac came back with a needs versus wants kind of list here. And so that's what's in your packet for the committee is those items 1 through 4, I think it was. That highlight the for sure ones that they recommended getting done. And so that starts with.
Yeah, some of them kind of go together.
Yeah.
These two would definitely go together.
Yep.
Yeah, this would.
It's pretty much
this
the
would be
top.
next area that's kind of
Yep.
sitting alone, but.
Yeah, Phil, on your list, it's the top 5.
Okay.
Eric, refresh my memory, what was, the existing clarifier, what was the work that you had been doing on that?
Repairs.
What's that? Oh, repairs?
So. The last bolt fell out that was in the arm,
Yeah,
which wedged on something which jammed it and took some more parts with it. So basically what's supposed to stand up went like this. So the clarifier was done, so had a contractor come in, replace all the bent parts. Redid everything and then we put I think what was happening before was they had water out there from the building. The line must have broke, so they just capped it off and never replaced it. So a lot of you get the, I don't know, what would you call like floaties, like junk that sits on top of the water.
Mhm.
Well, we could never get rid of it because there was nothing to push it over to the chute. So we put new water stuff in there, so it pushes all that out of there and try and get cleaner water. So, yeah.
So you're flooding it into the chute, up the ramp and into.
Yep.
and I remember we were talking about on past meetings, were you also looking into a new clarifier or just?
Yeah, so luckily, when we had that one down, we didn't have any rain events.
Yeah,
That would have pushed this, but
we never bought a new one or what?
no.
We were just looking into it, right?
Yep,
Okay,
I know I have money in the CIP to fix the other one,
mhm.
about what the cost was for this one, but. I mean, there's 44-year-old construction, I mean, the concrete tank is fine, it's just all the guts inside, well. Everything's moving in there and. Like Mike got called 3 weeks ago because a fuse went out. I mean, they got nothing broken there, but you know, he got an alarm at
Tight.
9:30 at night, and he's like, uh-oh. Know what happened last time? And without a clarifier functioning properly, all the water does in the sludge is it comes in, makes a pile of water, goes straight out, nothing happens. Cause nothing's moving in there to keep everything going, and that's what we waste, is what's on the bottom there. Well, if the arm's not moving and it's just pulling over here and the sludge is over here, then we're just running water.
Basically, this is like a raking pond, it's kind of pushing stuff around to a collection point.
And what's nice when you have it set up automatically, you know, obviously it's not gonna be pumping 500 gallons a minute, cause if you can't, the arm goes real slow. You know, just real slow around. So if you pump too fast, all you're doing is getting water. I want sludge out of there, so. And we eliminated doing this on the weekend. Because when they're trying to get everything done and hurry up and get out of there, and then you forget that you have this running. Clarifier was clean. Cause we ended this.
But just to be clear, there are costs in here to like rehab those existing clarifiers. So that would be something if we wanted to take, I mean, you've done quite a bit of rehab on it, it sounds like. You wanted to do additional rehab that. We can be put in there for that. This is strictly a brand new further clarifier and pump station.
So you'd like to take that one that you're having. The closest one, right? The closest one to,
No, it'd be the farthest one. The closest one was redone.
okay, you wanna take the other one down to the concrete. Start from zero and put all the, and you can't do that without another clarifier.
I wouldn't do it during a wet season.
Well, you're taking a chance, that's down for what, 3-4 months?
If you can plan it, it could be down a couple days.
Yeah, if you're not painting anything.
Right.
I think they were painted.
Yeah, I mean, the mast on top where everything sat on that you walked on, there's one bolt left up there holding that whole platform together.
I'll have to remember that next time I'm walking.
Jump extra hard.
So they can fabricate all those parts that you need.
Well,
and
see.
You can
that-
bring them up and
And I
whatever.
think that's where you're talking of, you know, rehabbing these is. There's no parts for this stuff anymore.
Yeah,
This is 40-some years old and now he's. Basically, that's what Saba did was fabricated everything back at his shop because he couldn't find some of the stuff.
so our radius is good though. We can find something that'll fit that diameter or radius.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Manufacturers.
Well, that's kind of important for the third clarifier. then.
And what's nice is when you do take them down. You have the other one, so you're not loading the one.
And when it's really raining like crazy, well, you got 3 of them.
Yeah, because what happens during the rain events is you get so much flow, it washes the solids out, and then washes the solids out, and then back to the biological process plant. So,
All right, so we'll need that paper for tomorrow.
Say it again,
We'll need that paper for tomorrow's board meeting,
for Thursday.
Thursday.
because that's the most current one.
the other kind of part to it would be schedule, and Chris, I know this intent to imply, if you want the DNR Clean Water Fund one, that's October 31st. And you guys, last time I checked, and I don't think anyone's changed since then, you were eligible for 10% principal forgiveness. So $5 million project, $500,000, so it's not insignificant. So yeah, if you apply for that, then the earliest you'd be eligible for it would be, December 2025 is when you can put something on.
So I know,
Yeah,
just
2026.
just so the committee knows with this and with our presentation from Ellers, talking to President Gerke, his desire was for us to digest this information this month and then bring it back in November for discussion. So that gives us time. So knowing that, I mean, I can't see us really making a jump that quick. But that's good to know this timeline so that.
Yeah,
way-
this can
Yeah.
get done.
Yep,
You just fill out the forms and then you're on the list,
great.
money's there, presumably if you score high enough, and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'd
don't-
still-
You don't ever have to use it if you don't want.
Okay.
or so on.
So you'd still recommend us applying
Yeah,
regardless? Okay,
apply if you have any inkling that you're gonna do the project
okay, great.
later 2025 or 2026.
Good to know.
They're pretty simple forms. You need my help, I can give it to somebody else. They're hours, so they do.
So what would happen, you apply, they get it, we go through everything, we send out for bid, and, you know, you're showing. 6.5 million for all that, and come back at 9-10 million. Now, can you just say, no, go back to the drawing board, or? Once you went that far in the bidding process, now you have to take that money?
No, you don't have to take that money, you know, you can bid it. Comes
Yeah,
back, don't
bid
what
each
you think,
piece.
you can draw up the bids and say, are we having anything right now, or. Hot scope or something and rebid it, DNR does not care that you are on that list. If you start doing the loan application, then there might be some implications, but. You wouldn't have to do that until after you get bids.
Alright.
Once we start, we say about 18 months for the.
Yeah, well, if the generators in there might be longer. What's that? I think the
Generators,
lead times will come down a little bit, but man, they were up in 24-month lead times at one point. I think they're back down maybe a year now, but. Yeah, generally the electrical equipment is what drives that. Sometimes you can't get the MCCs and electrical stuff for 10, 12 months. So.
I don't think this-
nothing for 6 months and then you start, 6 months after.
I don't think this is in our packet, is it? That I can't read that. It says forms to WDNR.
Yeah, forms to WDNR for state, so Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Oh, okay.
They're the only agency.
Okay,
We're just gonna fill out the intent.
yeah, I understand that, but I couldn't read that. The WDNR, what that was.
Yeah, sorry, it's lazy and cut it out of the. I think it's Chris.
No problem.
So we're still operating within permit, right? Okay,
yeah, and we got till December of 26 is when the permit ends. And I'm hoping. We can kick that can down another permit cycle about any more reductions in. Numbers.
There shouldn't be any, I mean, you're on a TMDL for phosphorus, so in theory, it shouldn't change, but yeah, you never know.
Man, you don't know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna guarantee it, but it should.
But yeah, we're making the numbers, with that chemical building addition, the plan is right now we're doing ferric chloride,
mhm.
which is highly corrosive and. I don't think anything works in that building from the heater to the eye wash. I would go to alum. So. And then why that building was so tall was if I can get a tanker load each time, the cost is a whole lot cheaper. So, and it doesn't go bad.
Yeah, they didn't have to handle it twice.
And I did do a pilot on it, this summer with alum and I can get well below what I'm doing right now.
So to price that chemical, well, alum is cheaper anyhow, it's just an element.
So. So we did a little experimenting.
Are we doing enough with our ultraviolet? Are we being effective in the total of what we can be effective with the ultraviolet? We're hitting that on the way out. Is that pretty much all we do then?
Yeah, we usually have a 1. I
Okay.
think we're allowed 400. So yeah, that's perfect.
Mhm.
This would help with odors too, getting rid of the primary clarifier and the biotolerant would help reduce odors.
Yeah,
I don't know, those are the odors that people can complain about. It would help on that end, it's primary sludge. We call it primary sludge, there's kind of a sludge odors that comes when it's, I think you only do it once a day. but there's orders released then, and when it's sitting there, it can be kind of odorous too. Would be kind of a side benefit to go into the soup to aeration, extended air process.
And then going by automatic is easier on us. And then I could probably get rid of 8 timers in the lab then. Cause Mike's got timers all over of when he's gotta do certain things, just cause nothing's automatic.
Yeah, it'll help you with process, it'll help with process control a lot.
So there won't be any elevating sewage on the way. Like there is now to
No,
the,
you wouldn't have that intermediate lift to go to the bio tower, yeah, everything would just be by gravity. So if you had a power outage, you wouldn't have to worry about trying, get those pumps running too.
yeah. Can we expect a savings on power usage on electricity with the things that we're incorporating?
Probably somewhat, it depends on how tight you wanna control or dissolve oxygen.
Well, the aeration is monitored, so that I keep at a certain level. And that will fluctuate. If it shows that it's a low DO, the blower will kick in.
Mhm.
If it's low, it stays low, or if it's higher, then it'll stay low. The digesters, I don't have no VFDs on it, all I do is they're cranking at 100%.
Yeah,
And those are 30 horse motors that are. And I got 2 of them running. And they're just pumping. Cause I can't monitor it.
well, we're not using the digesters properly because they're not working. Or as the air. That's, we won't be using any more air than's necessary.
I'd say less.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now, we're using more air because we wanna make sure you're doing enough.
Yeah, you're kind of over.
So you just put this in and hook it up to the SCADA and everything runs and it only turns on and pressures up when it needs.
Well, it'll be on all the time
Yeah.
for mixing to keep everything suspended, but yeah, it will throttle down as low as it can to keep everything mixing if it doesn't have the additional command beyond mixing.
Right. What was your final figure on that chart you had up there? If we did it all,
6.2.
Yeah, that's. This stuff here.
And then that top list of 5 that we were given, that's about 4.5.
that top list was 4.5.
Yeah, the top 5 that Isaac recommended that we should do, yeah, it's 4.5.
Try to be conservative with costs too, but I mean, this is basically the cost of, we did a project like this down in Deersville. It's a chemical cost for the building, and that bid at 1.4 million, so that's kind of where I came up with that number. I did a clarifier and res pumping station at the kettle manufacturing was 2.6, so those 2 numbers are pretty good, I think. The rest of them are estimates, based on number of gates and those sorts of things, but I try to be conservative so that I'm not high bidder on bid day. It's not fun.
So if you only choose to do the top 5 items, that doesn't mean that we don't have to do the rest. We're going to be doing the rest of the items at some point in the near future. Or going to
Yeah,
need
it's
to.
you guys.
Anyway, that'd be your call.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for Taj Mahal, and Phil knows that too. I'm trying to make
I think
what we
that,
have run the most efficient
yeah,
for the best bang for your buck.
I think the garage is gonna bite the dust again.
And he knows that, and Chris knows that too.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah,
But getting rid of the chemical in the building, gains garage space at least.
Yeah.
Because that chemical room in the building would become additional garage space.
well, we'd have to build a chemical building in order to take a truckload of gallon.
Yeah.
That's what, 5,500 gallons?
yeah, I think he said like 6,000.
Yeah, the tank, the trucks carry about 4,300 and it's the most they can carry for weight reasons on the road. So usually
Yeah,
we
weight was
make
heavy.
5,500 to 6,000, so you're not scrambling, to it's not completely empty, and then you get a boiler, you gotta.
Yeah, you gotta have-
play with it.
15-20% in there
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
time. All
And
right.
then with the chemical station, I know Bill had mentioned it, is we would add different points of where feed. So right now, we're feeding at one point, which I don't think is the greatest, because it's right on the tail end.
Mhm.
So the chemical's not getting a chance to work, and I think I can get lower. And I put it more towards the head of the plant and then right at the end to finish it, so.
Yeah, potentially using less chemical, which saves some cost.
So that stuff not that hard to pipe to a location?
No, they're
Plastic
small
cover?
diameter, but there'll be enough trenches around.
Oh.
Usually you run them all in the same trench until you get to the point where you have to split.
Yeah, because Ferric is gonna be a lot more expensive, is a lot more expensive than the alum would be.
That I don't know for sure if they're a huge difference, it kind of, a lot of times, it all depends on how your wastewater is, sometimes the alum reacts better, you use less of it. It's cheaper
Most of
than-
the quantity we use catches up a little bit.
it all depends, you'd have to look at it a little more closely to see which one. But I think Eric, it sounded like you did a test with alum, and
I think I was a gallon or two more a day. But I got a cleaner product.
And it's safer.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
yeah, people do like using alum better.
Yeah, you can have a glass of alum on your windowsill in your bedroom, it's not gonna bother you. They'll grow crystals maybe, but that's about it. No, it's safer. The Ferric is terrible stuff.
I think you'd question when you'd see them unload ferric. Be like, what are we bringing here?
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, I'm sure we'll have all kinds of questions to answer at the board meeting. Are you ready for this? All right, thank you very much, Bill. Okay, discussion and possible recommendation to the village board of trustees on wastewater treatment upgrades. So we'll have to handle that the same as we did the water tower.
And so really, we're just looking for direction. If there's any of those items from that long list that you absolutely want to scratch off, I mean, tell us now.
Yeah.
We'll slowly get to the right amount. So
It's all gonna be on the next board meeting then?
Yeah, we'll let the whole board tell us what to do.
yeah, the village president has a plan sometime in November. You guys will be talking about.
For the wastewater,
Mhm.
okay.
So there's no items you want to just scratch off as a committee? You want to
Are you
consider?
gonna do some of this analyzing during different meetings leading up to that?
We could, it just also helps us with our financing too. So like, we know that we need $4.5 million instead of 6, right? That's gonna
Yeah.
change what the rate impact is gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where all the answers are gonna come from.
Yeah.
From finance. I hope she's gonna be nice to us.
Do you want me to take it for this?
All right, we will move on now. This is gonna be very important when we consider the raises in the sewer utility, the rate increases. It's not gonna be a game, it's not gonna be, I think, well, things are expensive, so we're not gonna do it this time, or any of those excuses. We're going to have to get enough money to do the things that are necessary to get our plant, running efficiently and up to speed, so. All right, I'm done.
Lisa Trubisky, Elders, we are your municipal directors, and we're asked to conduct the sewer rate study in conjunction with the upgrade. I'm gonna skip this first slide, this was really for staff review that we don't need to look over. But why we're here is for that, upgrade, we're gonna talk about the revenue bond coverage and an all-in debt coverage. So right now, the sewer's debt is general obligation, where you're not required to maintain a certain amount of revenues above the debt payment. But with revenue, you are. So our process, what we do is a long range cash flow analysis. First, we look historically at your rate performance. We don't want to just look at 1 year because you could have had a low operating and maintenance expense year, or you could have really high. So we want to kind of generalize where you've been historically. Then we'll take future projections that include your operating maintenance and maybe annual inflation on that, where your depreciation goes with the addition of your assets, and then how you can fund your capital projects, whether it's best to issue debt or possibly use cash reserves. And then we'll show the average impact, an average residential user impact on that. So for the upgrade, we have 4.5 million for a 20-year clean water fund loan. And that is assuming that you're getting 500,000 of principal forgiveness. So to close on a loan for the clean water fund loan, you need to prove that you can have 1.1 times debt coverage. So your revenues need to be $1.10 per dollar of debt. Looking at your audit, you would have been sufficient. Looking at your 2024 budget, you wouldn't be sufficient to make that debt coverage. You have an increase in operating and maintenance expenses, your debt goes up as far as like your general obligation, but you have additional expenses that lowers that amount of revenue available for debt service. So when we want to look at the financial sustainability of the sewer utility, we don't want to just look at the revenue debt to maintain coverage on that, but you have general obligation debt, and then you're increasing operating maintenance. So we want to see above a 1.1 for your all-in debt coverage, and we'll see figures with this in a moment. So
Is that all debt or just utility debt?
For the utility debt, but all of the debt. So with utility, you have general obligation where you're pledging the ability to tax for it, but then you abate that amount with the utility revenue. Or there is utility revenue bonds that you are pledging the revenues of the utility paid for. So you can have the two types of debt, but we want to consider all that debt.
So they both have to add up to 1.1, or each has to be?
When we get to the cash flow, I'll show you what dollar amounts that we're talking about, but it's having your cash revenues less the cash expenses, that dollar amount that you have, you want to make sure that's 1.1 times whatever your revenue debt payment. So that is a coverage requirement when you issue revenue debt, and that will be monitored annually to make sure that you're meeting that coverage. But we want to make sure that you're covering all the obligations of the utility. So we want to consider, since all your other debt obligations is general obligation debt, we want to consider general obligation, revenue, all your operating maintenance expenses, and make sure you're covering that plus some, because you could have a high operating and maintenance expense here. Some could be wrong, it could go higher, so you don't want to just maintain that 1.1, you want to see above that. So that if you have a high year, you ensure that you're making that coverage. Does that make sense? Okay. So looking historically, we're going to ignore 2020. You had some refunding there, and it looks like you're way under, but that is because of a large debt payment due to a refinancing. But you can see historically on a cash basis that your rates aren't sufficient to cover what is the revenue requirement that you're determining. So you can determine a revenue requirement on a cash basis or utility basis. Water is a utility basis, regulated by the PFC. Sewer, for your ordinance, you do it on a cash basis. That's how we determine what your revenue requirement will be when we do the official sewer rate study. So we'll just focus on this, but you can see based on your 2024 budget, you would need to see about a 10% increase. Looking into the future for 2025, you would need about a 17% increase. And that's without doing any of the large treatment plant upgrade. Just looking historically, financially, we have a target reserve, that cash reserves that we want you to meet. that 6 months of next year's operating and maintenance expenses, as well as 100% of the debt, and include depreciation in that. So your cash reserves are very healthy. It's above the benchmark that we recommend. We do have concerns of the aging system, the reason for your upgrade. So you want to make sure that your operating revenues are not only covering your operating expenses, but also capital in the form of depreciation. So you can see even below, we're just slightly above.
So we would have to have cash to cover the depreciation within this utility budget.
You're wanting to make sure your revenues are sufficient to cover the depreciation amount so that you can invest in future capital. So it's not having this cash reserve as your debt payments plus depreciation to make sure for future investment and then your operating and maintenance. So that's just a set amount of reserve that you want to have. It's not necessarily that the cash reserve is funding the depreciation, but you're maintaining a reserve at a certain amount that includes the depreciation. So it's setting that benchmark. This is the future capital items, noting that we do have your plant upgrade in there, as well as some other items. Some of these were earmarked in your capital improvement plan to issue debt for, but you have healthy cash reserves, plus with the debt coverage requirement. At times you're earning extra cash because you have to maintain revenues above the debt payment. So you're kind of naturally earning cash unless you're using it for a higher operating maintenance here. So we're projecting out cash for these smaller items. Something to note is the undepreciated value of your system. So your assets less what is depreciated is at approximately $4 million. Through this time period, you're going to be adding 6.15 million of assets to that 4 million. So this is the projected cash flow. And we have your budget amount, then your 2025 year, and moving forward at the top, we have what your user rate revenues are, a percentage increase that we're recommending. You'll see the dollar amounts below that, so that's the additional dollar amount revenue that you would be getting off of that percent increase. And we have some other revenues, and then your expenses. And we have this important line right here, that's your net before debt service. So that is the line that you want to make sure that you're maintaining at minimum the 1.1 times revenue debt coverage. But we want to focus on this all-in debt coverage because you have a lot of general obligation debt. And we want to make sure that you're able to fund year after year all the obligations of the system. So we're recommending you can stay 1.3, 1.4, all-in debt coverage. But this amount is needed to ensure that you can make your debt payments and then have some. This negative years here, where you see the net annual cash flow negative, that is because you're using up some of your reserves to pay for capital assets rather than issuing debt for them. So that's what we're showing right here. So you see some negative years, but if you look at the amount of capital assets, had you not funded that with cash, you'd be looking at approximately 150 positive this year. Same with here, 130 positive. So just know that that's the reason for that net annual cash flow negative is using cash reserves to fund some of your capital items. I'm just going to breeze through this slide because we are doing a full cost of service, but sometimes you apply a straight percentage onto your volumetric and your user charge. At times you want to consider what we are doing as a cost of service, and that is determining who's causing the cost and make sure that they're paying their fair share, rather than just 20% on your volume and on your meter charges. But had you just done that with this, these are the amounts that you would see, but you'll see through the cost of service what the amounts are. So doing a cost of service, first we determine that revenue requirement. So making sure you're funding your operating maintenance, your debt payments, and then cash funding capital. Less other revenue, that is your revenue requirement. So we determine what your revenue requirement is. Then we're gonna allocate that requirement between various customer classes, so those that are costing the cost are paying the cost. And then determining that, we design the rates, your volumetric rate and your fixed charges, etc. So this is what we determine your revenue requirement to be in total. So we have a lot goes behind this. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but you have your operating maintenance, your capital costs in the form of debt, and the cash capital. And then you take up this other income to arrive at this revenue requirement. So we need to design the rates by class, well, by volumetric and fixed charge to make sure that what classes are currently using the system as is, that all of that makes up that revenue requirement. So this is just showing that your current rates are insufficient to cover all of these costs with that new revenue requirement that we're determining, what your total revenues are currently, and then you need to make up a difference of almost 460,000, which is estimated at about 70% increase. We just take those costs, you can take budget line by line, allocate it by function, you have your flow, your BOD, etc. And we spread that up, costs out accordingly to determine how much we need to get to for like your fixed charge, your volumetric, by function. So then we determine what your rates are, determining what those costs from the previous page, your allocation, divided by how many billable units to get your new rate. And do that for all of these costs. And that determines, this is what the cost of service is showing. We're keeping that the same for the test year, assuming and showing that you're spreading this increase over 3 years. We determined the step rates for 2025, 2026, 2027 to get to that full amount needed to get to that revenue requirement. So you're able to do that over several years. This just shows the rate impact for 2025 only. So where we saw these new rates by year. This is showing like what average low and high users by customer class and the percentage change for those. And then we just have a table showing the whole planning periods when you get to that third step, those final rates, what the impact is for users with meter sizes and usage. And that is all I have, unless you have additional questions.
So you're taking into consideration that a residence, their standard charge may be taking care of the entire burden of their standard cost,
Currently,
or most of it. So they wouldn't get a huge standard cost bump.
the percentage increase, so your fixed charge
Mhm.
is actually more for an average residential user.
Yeah,
You can go back. Here. So for an average residential user, we're using 12,000 gallons because that's what the PSC considers for your water, what an average residential user would be. It's 12,000. So you get a total of 166. Your fixed charge is $86, leaving you about, your volumetric is about $80. So for this average residential user, their fixed cost is a lot higher, greater than 50% of what they're paying in total. So if you look at like a fixed income, who maybe doesn't use a lot of water, they're subsidizing someone that's paying a higher fixed cost. Where in the cost of service study, the fixed charge on an average residential user would be lower than the usage. So those that are using the water are paying, they don't have that fixed charge as high for maybe somebody who doesn't use.
so you're trying to heal the subsidies.
Yep, right.
get rid of the subsidies or whatever, and the actual usage is what will bear most of the charge, most of the increase.
For an average residential user,
Mhm.
yes. It will vary depending on how much water one uses, but in the scenario, an average residential user, currently their fixed charge would be more, you know, within the metric in that scenario. But the costs are being allocated both to the fixed charge by meter size and the volumetric, just changing where you see a bigger increase. For higher users,
Yeah,
and obviously bigger meter. It meter size goes up, but.
well, I like that you're protecting the old couple or the single mom that's still alive yet, or that, you know, from getting more of a hit from this than they deserve. So you're figuring so that they'll just care their fair share of it. Where the high users and whatever will be paying, what they cause in their function. Okay.
So Lisa, in your recommendations, you had the 20%, 20%, 20%. So if we decide to push our borrowing in this wastewater treatment plant upgrade, you know, by a year, it sounded like you were still saying regardless of that project and levying debt, you're still recommending an increase of about 17%.
Yes, based off of the projection for 2025 cash flow. Here, your debt is going up, we wanna make sure we're maintaining, I would have set it at a 1.3 all-in debt coverage.
Mhm.
It would be about a 16.7% increase needed to maintain the 1.3 all-in for what we projected for 2025. So regardless of you doing a large plant upgrade, you're still gonna need to see increases. You have your operating and maintenance is increasing a lot, and here we have the annual inflation of 3% moving forward. So based off of 2024 right now, 10%, 2025 projections to maintain a 1.3 all-in debt coverage would be 16.7%. So regardless, yes, I would recommend an increase.
And would that be in 1 year that we do the increase?
As long as,
Or we spread it out?
right, so if we're considering no debt. You could look at going below your all-in debt coverage, but then you would be using cash reserves just to function on paying all your obligations, which we don't want to see on a continuous basis, like it might happen in 1 year.
So would it have to be in 1 year?
To maintain 1.3, yes,
Okay.
and then it starts to go down. So we would want to see some inflationary increases, depending on what capital you add, there might be larger increases, but if we're assuming your treatment plant upgrade right now, we maintain a 1.3 based on these projections, it's 16.7%.
So is that gonna be like a 2020 for 3 years?
Or if this was to happen in 2020, we had it in 25 payments. 26. Yeah, so 26, just some interest payment. If you're just drawing funds and haven't officially closed because you haven't reached substantial completion until 2026, and then you can start principal payments in 2027. So that's kind of how we have it here. So if you did push this back, this would push it back. You may be able to spread out, you know, the increases more if the project is delayed, if it moves up, so you would have to probably crunch in, higher increases. So, but that's what we're trying to get to, is making sure that we're maintaining all in debt coverage like this. Preferably, we'd like to see it like 1.3 at least. increase, but 1.24 we got, because the revenues too, to keep in mind, we're just doing a percentage increase on your current users right now. The number of users and the usage that you have. So if you have any development, you know, your revenues are naturally probably gonna increase. And we just keep this with no changes to your users. So things can change throughout the years. And so evaluating it is good in the future. And again, capital improvements stop at 2028. There's nothing here, so we're just doing inflationary to keep up with your 3% inflation on your operating and maintenance and trying to maintain all to average level.
So we would be returning back to an inflationary increase.
For the cash flow purposes,
Yeah,
yeah, we just have a 3% on operating and maintenance.
is that what, that's what we don't, we haven't done that on a regular basis. And I always thought that was a good thing to do, to throw a 3% in there, 3.5, whatever. And it's fairly unnoticeable, but it's there and it's help keeping the bar above the curve where you want it. And then we don't have big 63% increases and stuff.
Because it's been about 4 years since the last increase.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind.
And I think before that, it was a very long time.
We had done probably 4 or 5 of them within the 10 years prior to that. We were doing a regularly cost of living for the utility.
I remember they like.
Yeah, but what we were trying to, we were using depreciation to balance the budget. And that's, you can do that, but if you don't cover your depreciation with revenue, then that bills this higher when you have to borrow money and do that. So I wanted to have operation paid for, depreciation paid for, and a little bump ahead of everything before we start on this project. Interesting. That's where compounding works against you.
So, upgrade or not, I know that I and staff would appreciate guidance if there's a number that you recommend that we build into our budget as far as the 2025 rate increase, that would be helpful to know now. And again, it doesn't need to be 20%, but just something so that we're building it in. And then again, when you guys discuss the full board or even finance committee, then the full board, you know, that number might change, but it'd be helpful to get the information now.
You have 20% there. What did you say? It was 16 point.
Without building up for the future project, it'd be 16.7 to get this at 1.3. Okay, so that takes off these projections of 3% on operating and maintenance, no changes in users. Get that at a 1.3, which we would want to see at least 1.3. It would be 16.7.
But if we are planning on doing fairly soon sewer upgrade, it needs to be done right. Something needs to be done. You recommend 20.
If you plan to do the upgrade, 20, yeah, if it's very unsure, doing 17% at least gets you closer to that 20, and you can make it up, you know, in the next couple of years. So doing the minimum that you need, knowing that you have time, 2 more years of increases to get where you need to be. That makes sense. We'd probably be looking at 21 as a compound, so you can see, but it might be slightly more. You can see where you get to here.
So what can be done on my end to cut costs?
Stop asking for all kinds of stuff. Just kidding.
I mean, you had a higher year in 2019, and then it drops. And then 2024 budget.
Yeah, that was just so I could get used to it, so now that I've been here a year.
So I,
mean.
to your point, I think we've more accurately been spreading things across the funds over the last few years, which is why you see that uptick. And I'll add though, I mean, our biggest line item is outside services, which we've talked about before as a board. That's kind of acts as our catch-all for any time we have to contract out work. One could argue that the amount that we have in there maybe doesn't always need to be there. And I give Eric credit, the more things that you're doing internally, right, is helping to save those costs. It's less times we're contracting out those services. So there's opportunities there, but it's not going to help a $4.5 to $6 million borrowing. Yeah.
Go back. to maybe that the 70% increase is driven from for knowing that you still need an increase to catch up for the years, where you see increases in budget, you're gonna see a slight increase in your debt payment. And then just getting high enough where you're maintaining above the amended policy.
Yeah, I'm looking at a year and a half from now. We're going to have gone through 2 elections. And we may have a substantially different board. We might not have a majority of the people who are on board now, might not be there. And the people replacing them haven't seen all of this and haven't understood this reasoning and all this other stuff. So putting it off may be healthy for a year or 2, but then it's going to hit the fan because nobody's going to do it. Perhaps, I would like to set it up so that in 3 years, 25, 26, 27, in 3 years, we could be at the point where we're at a cost of living wage, a cost of living increase each year.
So you're saying the 20%, that's what I'm having. Just do the 20% over the next 3 years.
25, 26, and 27, we would
Yeah.
do the third of each of the big, whatever, or what we have to do. And then after that, for 28 on, we should be able to carry on with just 3%, 3.5%, whatever cost of living is. Whatever the economy. I think that's our best bet to have this fixed and continue to be fixed.
What do you normally see, Lisa? Do you see the big, well, I mean, obviously we read the paper for the local ones that have been forced to do it. But what do you see for municipalities that are planning? Do you see the 60% over 3 years, or do you see we're gonna do 10% for 15 years?
I did a sewer rate study with the Village of Wareham, and we did the same thing. They were planning ahead and knew they were gonna do a project, but they wanted to be able to phase it in. They had a 3-year phase in for their project. But I mean, some, they don't have a choice. They didn't plan ahead like this. And if they wanted to close on their loan, they need to do a 70% increase in 1 year. Because you have to be able to prove that either per your last audit, you meet
You need
that
1.1.
or be able to show the board has passed the year increase. It's not saying you need to do that now, because if you're not sure of this, I would recommend saying, okay, let's do 20% for the next 3 years until you know for sure. So doing 1 year right now, and then when you make the decision and how much you're gonna do for sure, whether it's gonna be 5 million, if it's gonna be that 6.23, and then determining what you need. But that's just something to keep in mind when you're closing on that clean water fund loan. Whether last year's we need that debt coverage requirement, or proving that, okay, we've already done increases and we know what we need.
And I think to your question, budgetary, the 20% is probably a good budgetary, and even if we lower it.
Yeah.
Doesn't go high.
Yeah.
For budgetary purposes, looking at everything. As it stands, and if we decide later to lower it, at least we.
So Lisa, can I ask that, just plugging the numbers here in our budget right now, so if we did a 20% increase based off of this year's projections, I mean, that equates to like 120,000 of additional revenue or somewhere around there, 100-some thousand. There you go. So that was pretty close. So where do you recommend we put that? Would we dedicate that towards depreciation, towards our reserves in a sense to build that up over the years?
Yep.
Preparation for this borrow?
Yep, and, this is already our report, because you did the 2
Yeah.
years of the project, so that really, this part of this higher amount, you should let those out. But really, yeah, I mean, you can do, increase your operating maintenance, cover your depreciation of that. If you have any other cash funded capital that you think you might have, place it in that one.
And that's one of the things when staff reviewed this, if you remember, we look at that long-term CIP, there's a lot of projects that we plan on borrowing for. By us doing it this way, we can pay more of those projects cash on hand, not having to borrow, just even as we're leading
Still
up. to that.
maintain.
Correct.
So this is our benchmark. We talked about the 6 months of operating maintenance, next year depreciation and your that payment. This is how much you're above that benchmark. So again, you don't have any capital here, but even using cash reserves, 266 to 210, you're still 174,000 above the recommended reserves that we want you to maintain. It's always fine to go above that, recommend that. But you are still above that recommended cash benchmark. So just to point that out.
So 4 years from now, we want to do a couple of capital things down there and see it's gonna pop 2.5 million to finish the list or whatever. It's better for us to start with all the cupboards full. Everything is paid and we're up to date and whatever. And to go through this thing again and figure it and see what it's gonna cost, and we might cut that 20% a year in half or down to a third or something. Because we're not building in this makeup, we're in the formula we're studying.
Yeah, continually updating this long-range cash flow, right, can tell you what we truly need for increases. Like I said, this is non-changed customer amount, the amount of usage, the amount of meters that you have, assuming no growth. Well, let's say you get a large, something behind the TID, that large industrial user, and this all changes, even within, a year or two. So we're continuously updating this, plus you get to know what future projects look like. You might have some come up that are larger, or if you're only doing 5 million now, but you want to finish the 1.23 in 2029, projecting that out, knowing what increases you need. So continuously doing something like this, you're seeing how to lead, you can spread out these increases, and you're not having to rip off that Band-Aid of 1 year. You need to do 70%, otherwise you can't close our time. That won't. And then you have to determine what they can use cash, and we still building up our cash reserves.
Is there an estimation that, I know there's the 2 different, rate increases. Is the 16.7, right, is for if there is no, updating to the treatment plant?
Correct.
And then the 20% is with it. Is there kind of an estimated per household how that's gonna increase their water bill? Both of them.
Yep, the 20%. 20% is this. So this is where we're doing based on the cost of service. 20%, we take residential is based on a 5/8 inch meter, a low user at 10,500. This says average user 10,000, high user 12,500. What that current bill is, what with the proposed rates, with the phased in that we did, and that dollar change amount per quarter.
Per quarter, okay.
It's about $30 more a quarter.
Confirming that next, so let's just say this is 125, we're going to 2026, it's gonna be 3521 on top of.
And you know
What it was
right,
for
$38
2025. Yeah.
That's with a 20% increase.
Because we have to free. So you're assuming like almost $30 a year, so this would be after that third increase is put in place, what that dollar amount change would be. So after 3 years, the quarterly charge will be that much higher than what it is
But it's easier to swallow than $30 per quarter.
for 1 year, and
So it's not like it's inflation where it goes up by 20 and up by 20 and up by 20, and you carry that 20 for the rest of your life, plus you get more inflation. It drops back down to what it is now. If I'm understanding.
I'm sorry.
As long as there's no other products.
After that, the rate drops down to basically pretty much what it is now.
There is no decrease in the rates,
No,
it just continues.
but the increases after the initial 320% stay at more like 3%.
Yeah, so this is whatever those current rates are.
Yeah.
And then periodically, without any major projects, would just be some inflationary increases. And right now.
But that would be the new rate.
So it's not showing anything going down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that would be 3% on whatever these new rates are.
Mhm.
So there would be no decrease in rates projected.
So you show those 3% there, Lisa. And I see our number drops below the 1.3.
Yeah.
So is that something you or the company would have to come back in and do a whole study again to say you should go 4%?
Percent, it's, just do across the board. But when you're getting into a 70% increase, that's where you want to evaluate, how much should be volume, how much should be fixed based on, how the customers are using the system. But to do like 3%, you can do 3% increase on the volume charge and then each meter size.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at not that, if the board goes with it either way, and then I'm standing behind it because I'm down there on this project. And then we go, oh, by the way, it's another 8% in 2030 because our numbers are wrong.
Well, this is a projection. This isn't, like I said, you should evaluate this continuously because your users can change. Your operating maintenance expenses, if it gets more efficient with this upgrade, you might see them decrease. Then you don't need as high of increase.
And the nice thing about you having this done now, when you look at it in a year, after we've got another year, you can easily plug these numbers in,
Easily
right?
updated.
Easily update it and do a continuous review. Because you've already done the hard work.
Right, yeah. So updating is a lot easier than the initial creation. And we won't be doing a full sewer rate study each time.
And it's just plugging in our current budget numbers
and then
and where we are.
Updated CIP,
Yes.
current audited information, projected information, budget, and updating that, and then seeing where that goes. So I would say either, okay, pass a resolution, you're increasing 20, 20, 20, and 30. I would never recommend that. I'm saying even do the 1 year, and then you can always evaluate how things shake out to see if those high increases are needed even in the. But if we need to pass this in order to close on the water company, fine, that we recommend. but I wouldn't say, I would never say your increase in 2028 is guaranteed to be 100%.
And if
There's
we,
still-
if we pass the 2020, we can always review that future after you do next year's review.
Yeah.
And maybe we only need 19%, and we can always change that, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna ask about that timing, so I believe we have the privy to change it, is it just like how many times per year, can we do it each quarter, I mean, how much flexibility do we have?
To update this, if you're gonna do it within maybe the next year, that might not cost anything, but it really is just to do the long range cash flow analysis.
Sorry, that's not what I was asking, I was asking, how often can the village decide to increase the rates, to
You
change?
can increase it as much
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
as- or you see just
Yeah.
the village board needs to pass.
So let's say around budget time, if there's not an appetite, right, because the paramedic program and all these other things going on, it doesn't mean we can't just revisit this in January, right? There's nothing that stops us.
Mhm.
We should, the way things are
Yeah.
going.
Eric, are we gonna be able to use some of our replacement fund costs to cover some of the costs on the original build that we're taking out a loan for? Maybe
So,
make the loan a little bit, but then we're gonna have to replace those costs, those funds that we use, right?
I would say that a lot of my, what was the general funds that I use?
The outside services?
The outside services is a lot of, I'm fixing the blowers,
Hmm,
I'm fixing electrical.
Yeah.
So a lot of this I'm using for fixing.
yeah, yeah.
It's not really maintaining because it doesn't work, so.
Oh, you're
But-
using replacement funds for that?
So what
Yeah.
my operating cost is, it's not really for operating, it's fixing the stuff that's not working.
Mhm.
So once all this is done, I wouldn't be tapping that fund like I am now. So that's where I was getting with,
So you
Where
will
I could
see
save.
this actually decrease,
right,
and that's, I mentioned that, with this upgrade, you very well can see
The,
this.
yeah, right. The replacement is not expected to happen that often or whatever,
Right,
so that should go down. That would be a good place to store extra revenue though.
which I think.
I mean, who would question you?
I think the DNR slash the loan people say you have to have so much as a backup to cover some of that loan, right?
correct, they will give you an amount that annually you should be depositing into your equipment replacement fund.
And right now, we're above it, what's required,
So
so,
reserves?
yeah,
Yeah.
so we're good on that.
Yeah,
But I think we used a little bit for the clarifier, but then we got the insurance reimbursement.
I still think we should go 20. Should go 20 the first year, not, I mean, if it says we only need 16 points, whatever. I think we should still go 20. And see how things are after that. If what we need for the following year is 15 instead of it, well, then we can adjust.
I'm a little hesitant because of all the tax increases we're doing right now.
See, that's,
It's gonna be
that's,
hard to swallow for these taxpayers.
yeah, well, we can't think of that. We can't think of that. This isn't
Why not?
taxes. This is purchase of a product and a service. And we're providing that service and.
I'm not sure why 20% has to be a fixed thing. Why
Well,
can't it be 16?
how much did eggs go up and meat and all that stuff? Those are products.
It's only 20% for 3 years, and it's just getting us back
Yeah.
to the level of where we can.
It's 20% every year, isn't it?
For 3 years, yeah. See, that's,
And then
it's.
down.
Is it-
Utility charges are not a tax at all. They are paying for services. We run 2 companies. We run a water company. and
That's
a sewer
true, it
company.
isn't.
And
But still, things are going up for the taxpayers. We're gonna do a $200,000 referendum. They're being asked to raise taxes for the school. How much more are we gonna raise?
the school isn't raising
School's
taxes.
not raising taxes.
Baloney. I don't
They're
believe
not,
that.
it's staying.
No.
I don't believe that. Why do we have to have a referendum?
So they can use the wrong money to pay the right bills.
I don't believe that.
Because they used the right money to pay the wrong bill.
I don't believe that. I don't believe it.
Well, that's how it
They're
is.
just the same. It's just how they are allocating the funds that they are receiving.
I still don't believe that. I think the taxes are going up.
As far as.
I would be more in line with the 16%. It's hard to swallow for me, but
60% is not enough.
It'd have to be.
how do you know
17.
that? So we evaluated.
Per-
But the thing is that we were getting two different rates, so you wanna get argumentative about it. We were getting two different rates. One was 16%, if we didn't improve. The wastewater,
16.9.
16.7, right? And the second one was with improvements. I think we should just do the 16.7 and evaluate it after that.
Well, for budget, we're talking budgetary purposes, for our staff to figure out a budget.
Yeah, they can figure it out.
A 20% for them to figure it out, present it to us, and then.
I just don't think the taxpayers can stomach this. I mean, I know it's not a tax, but taxes are going up and inflation's going up. How much more can families sustain this? Can't we just do the 16.7 and evaluate it after that?
Then we
You
have
said
zero,
we have to
then
do
we
that.
have zero upgrades.
Yeah, that's how we got
That's how
into
we
the
have
problem
zero
we're in.
upgrades. We cannot upgrade the sewer system for this,
Our
we
store.
cannot. Yeah,
Our
we
store.
Why
cannot,
can't we?
because we don't have the funds. This is what this presentation is all about. If we wanted to do nothing, 16.7. If we wanted to do an upgrade, we're gonna have to look at a 20%. So we either.
I'm just
do an
not,
upgrade
I'm just not so sure that,
or
I'm
we
not so
don't.
sure. That's true. I think it should be 16.7.
I'm just gonna make a comment, if you do the 16.7 and you end up doing this project,
Mhm.
these percentages will increase. If everything stays the same. So
We
the
won't
lower
have the
amount you do now will increase, everything stays the same, will increase the future increases. So that's what we try to do, is do a split more evenly across the board. So just making that if this is happening, doing a lower increase, we take higher increases.
So you're putting that 3.3% off makes the 3.3% cost more.
So the 60% though, Lisa, would be
Hmm.
for the improvements at plant at 4.5 million, right?
The 16.7.
No, 60%, 60.
Oh, yeah.
The 320s.
Cumulative is 72.8, so. For the revenue requirement that was generated, it's approximately a 70% increase. But there's a compounding effect with increases, so yes, it's 20, but it's 20 on top of 20, another 20 on top of the 20. So really, you're looking cumulative at almost 73%.
Well, I'm just, like with Kurt, I mean, I agree, I mean, it is a lot of money, and like I said. The board, or if I'm standing behind it, I wanna make sure. You know, so it's 20% to get us even, and then it's 20 and 20 for the upgrade, right? So it's. If you just do the 17, 16, 7, and we don't do an upgrade, well, then I just say you're just looking at the cost of living, the inflation,
Gives you caught up.
right,
If we
with
want
no
to get an
upgrade,
Upgrade,
right, with no upgrade.
with no upgrade, we have to do the 20, which. How long is our current sewer system going to last?
Expected life is 20 years, and we're at 44.
Yes.
And Kurt, I get it. But the problem I have is. I get a phone call tonight. You know, the clarifier,
Mhm.
I don't have time to plan, I need 200,000 right now to fix it.
Mhm.
The light
Yeah,
is
The
really
replacement fund
close.
disappears in a hurry with
Right,
that.
that's why.
You can see operating maintenance continue to go up because it's gonna be more costly trying to keep it running.
So why did we need the 16.7 in the first place? Because we haven't increased rates,
Correct.
Yeah,
That's 2019.
Been a long time.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
because we increased rates last year, didn't we, or is that just water?
Just water.
Water's cheap.
No, and I've
Compared to
been here
sewer.
22 years and I've seen hardly any really serious increases. I remember one a good dozen years ago when we
Yeah, we
did
did
it.
an 8% that, or
Yeah,
12%.
and everybody had a heart attack with about 12%, but we hadn't increased it for like 5 or 6 years before that.
Mhm.
Because we haven't.
When was
kept
it
up.
12%?
This was like over a dozen years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've been here 22 years. and
We
it's-
did something like this on a budget, we did it with, off the website, off of the internet charts and whatever, and bar graphs and whatever. And, Roger went through and he constructed all this stuff, and he came up with numbers like you did and whatever, he says, we're need this to keep that line above the
Yeah.
bar.
And
And we
honestly,
decided to say, oh, what did that turn out to be, $10 a quarter?
yeah, something like that. And
Yeah.
honestly, we have not kept up with the cost of living every single year. Now, if 20 years ago, when we started this and done 3 every year for the last 20 years, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah,
But the village did not.
And I'm
Do
sure
that.
COVID didn't help much with.
Well, we had-
Yes.
we had like, previously, we had 1 year that inflation was like 11.9 or something, and the next year it was like 9 something. So that's 20% right there, and we never answered that.
Yeah. We just have not done this on a routine basis, and now we are finally trying to make this a routine increase.
I got to think about it, I just,
Yeah, yeah. get the-
20% is hard for me to stop.
So there'll be multiple opportunities. So again, I'm just looking for direction so that when I build the.
I say
budget.
budgetary
Yep.
20%, then present the numbers to us, then as a board, we can decide.
I would say there'll be multiple opportunities. Finance will review it.
Yes.
It'll go before village board at a budget level, and there's a resolution that you guys will ultimately need to pass to.
I mean, I would just like the comparisons, I'm not hearing enough. We're just saying, well, it has to be 20%, why? I just don't buy that, I'm from Missouri, I'm from the Show Me State. You gotta tell me why,
The 70.
because these, and I say taxpayers, I know it's not a tax,
Mhm.
but I'm representing the
Yeah,
taxpayers.
yeah, we all are.
And
Well, get the
I
call.
just, and I'm sorry I got so huffy before, but
So are you
I
saying
just-
the
I'm
20 to the
just-
17?
what's that?
Are you saying the 20 to the 17? Why we don't do 17 instead of 20?
The 16.7, I think was. that's what it
Yes.
was, yeah. I just want the comparisons. You're just saying, well, we can't do any upgrades unless we do it this way. Why? I mean,
We don't
No,
have
we're
money.
squirreling away a few bucks.
you're saying we don't have the money, but I'm not seeing the figures. Sorry.
I will put up screen, I will wipe out all the increases and show you what you're getting.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because it's not for us to make those decisions, it's for us to
I mean-
present and recommend, and for finance company to make that decision, and for the board to agree or not agree. You know, that's your committees do this and the board does that. Because it's 78,000 or 78%. And the doing 20 brings that 78 down to 70.
Here's numbers.
So doing nothing, taking out that project, doing nothing gets you below even one. Maintaining one. This means you're not generating enough revenue to cover your general obligation. You don't have any revenue right now, but you're operating and maintenance expenses. You're not even generating enough revenue to cover those each year. That means you're dipping into your reserves just to cover your annual expenses.
And this is at the 16.7,
That number.
No, this is not. This is why I'm trying to say, if you do nothing,
yeah,
you're using reserves just to.
and how much is that? How much are we using?
Well, $1 is too much of reserves.
let's say, well, that's already borrowed, more so that
It's like you dipping into your IRA.
I'm listening to her, see what the figures are.
you wouldn't be using cash, you'd be borrowing, so
Yeah.
you're gonna be increasing your debt payments. Cause you won't wanna use, cause you're using cash reserves. to
So we're
borrow
using
regular-
326,000, you're saying?
No, so like 50, 60,000, you're dipping into, for the first couple of years.
Okay,
Into reserves,
50, 60,000.
because I would have to show debt issue for this and this to really show it. But then you're increasing this, because you're gonna have interest on top of these dollar amounts, so it's not perfect, but the point being, you do nothing, you are not maintaining.
Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't do nothing, I'm just saying, why do we come up with these figures?
Because we want this coverage to be high enough, so that
Yeah.
if you end up with a year. Because this shows how your operating and maintenance expenses can change year over year. So this is projecting, 3% increase off of that, so 455. So you're not doing an upgrade, you're just experiencing more and more operating and maintenance expenses, so this is likely to increase. Because you're not upgrading it, you're just gonna continue to have issues that you're paying more for, so that's gonna increase. But you
Keep
want,
putting
so that's
Band-Aids
why.
on everything. And the Band-Aids just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because you're not healing the actual problem.
Well, I'm just have to think this over before, I make a decision. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
it's,
great.
I
We're
mean,
not making a
That's good.
decision tonight.
That's good.
The 16.7 came up with because I did a solve for this coverage to be at 1.3.
the thing is, you don't say that we're making a decision tonight, but you seem like you've already made it. It's gotta be the 20%.
I'm looking at this as a budgetary standpoint. Chris is asking for a budgetary
Yeah.
number so that they can present something to us as a board. So that we can then review it.
Mhm.
And looking at a budgetary number of 20% is not going to hurt. And then we can make a decision, once we see all the final budget numbers, maybe we don't want to do 20%, maybe we wanna do 18%. But for a budgetary, you always wanna budget higher. And then know that you can go lower, just like we're doing with the TID, we're budgeting low with the understanding that it's going to be higher. But we wanna make sure that we are covering things on the TID, so we are looking at the bare minimum of what we need. And then the buildings come out higher, we get more revenue, and then we are looking good. From our yearly budgetary standpoint, we wanna budget things higher. And then come under budget. So tonight, we are just trying to provide guidance to Chris and the staff for looking at our 2025 budget. And then we have the entire amount picture shown to us. And then if we need to make adjustments, we need to make anything, we can look at it then.
Yeah, they could weigh things against other things.
Yes.
It's all,
and
we were
make it-
thinking about this, we didn't know about this, but we
Exactly.
have to drop that
We're
20%.
looking at standpoint of the finance, we're looking at the budget. There may be other places that we're looking at and going, okay, well, we can look at some of this and do a decrease on this, and we have to increase that. This is just one piece of the puzzle.
To keep us in the black, we gotta, she's saying, Lisa, that we gotta be at 16.7. To keep us in the
To
black,
maintain the 1.3 audit.
right,
Yeah, that's what the bylaw reading in the present.
That increases by 50,000, then you're not gonna, you're maintaining 1.0, you're gonna be using reserves. That's why you wanna have extra in that.
All right, can we, move that snow and ice policy to like another meeting?
can we? Because otherwise I don't think I can enact it. Or enforce it then for the
Oh,
winter.
okay, yeah, we have to have that by November.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Any other questions on this thing? All right, so we will, talk this over with the board also.
Yep.
So discussion of possible recommendations for the work of the snow and ice policy.
For the sake of time, we can go through it pretty fast here. You have the existing policy. What we crossed off is what we're removing, what's in yellow is what we're adding. A lot of this language was added by the village marshal for enforcement reasons. As far as, you know, a mailbox, right? When we replace a mailbox, when does our DPW director have the discretion to tow people or to mandate other things? And so that's really all the cleanup is. So that way, by the time snow falls, we are ready to go from an enforcement standpoint.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying so long.
So some of the cleanup on this was on the policy. I plow snow, I hit it, I'm gonna fix it, right? I drive in and I hit it. If I drive past it and I don't even have the blades down and the snow, mailbox falls over, they can call me right now and tell me, yep, you did it, and I have to fix it. I wanna eliminate that. So I've replaced 3 last year, or this season. 1 we hit, 2 we never touched. And they called the office and said it was because of me and I had to fix it. 1, there was a toothpick left of a post. So it was rotted. And yeah, we never even touched the other one. And then the one that we actually did physically hit, he never called and said anything. And we replaced it, so, and then I wanna put a minimum or a maximum on there that we just, you know, buy a generic mailbox.
Well,
Cause,
they get some pretty expensive
right, if
mailboxes.
someone's got the nice, you know, hunting one out there and I hit it, they're like, that was $300. Technically, on the old policy, we'd have to pay the $300.
I can't believe what they're charging for mailboxes.
So,
Inflation.
Yeah,
and then,
it hits us too.
with working with the marshal was by giving me the ability to call for a snow emergency, which I had, but just cleaned up a little bit better. Now cars that sit out there and don't move for months on end, now he can tow them without. going
Is
through
that in
this.
point number 1? What you got highlighted there?
No, it's not on 7,
Number 7, okay.
yeah, no emergency.
Oh, all right.
And then it was cleaned up, I think it had the old radio station in Saukville, WGLB, that's been gone for 20 years. I think it had some stuff on there, I was supposed to clean up sidewalks and intersections for people, we took that out. So just cleaning stuff up.
So the yellow was the add.
Yeah,
Okay.
And you said this was based on what Marshall needs recommendations.
Yep, we work together on it, so we do work together. And obviously.
you gotta enforce it, so
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
good.
In any snow emergency that I would, try and declare anything, I'd be contacting my administrator. If not, the village president and the marshal, so it's not like I'm just gonna, out of the blue, just go and say one just cause I can. I prefer not to because it's more work I gotta do. So we did call one this year when we had that 15 inches, I mean, we handled it with the equipment we had, so.
Well, if Dan's in Alaska and Chris is on vacation, somebody's gotta call him. It gives you the ability in that
Right.
to do that in that odd situation.
It's on you.
Yeah, I'm here to work together with everyone, this isn't just my village, it's me, it's. Everyone, it's,
No, while we were waiting for Dawn, I read through this and I thought all the changes were very reasonable. And
So can I have a motion to recommend the passage to the village board?
I make a motion to recommend that the snow and ice control policy and procedure to the village board.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Is that on the, that should be on the
I think
agenda.
that's on the second meeting in October, but yes, we have really full agendas over the next.
Okay, well,
3
that went
meetings, so
quick, that went quick, okay.
it'll be good.
Any correspondence? Items for future, if none? I would,
Motion adjourned.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you very much for putting up with this long.
Thank you.
Kurt, when I was in Kewaskum, they were doing sewer rate and we weren't doing any expansions. It was to pay for debt because
Mhm.
years ago, they put a new lift station in, actually 2 new lift stations. And, I don't know if it was Ehlers. They came in with